In the late 1980s, archaeologists on the Swedish island of Gotland were excavating a Viking burial ground when one of them noticed something that made no sense.
A skull, male, adult, and on his upper front teeth, horizontal grooves, deliberate, precise, as if someone had taken an iron file and carved stripes into living bone. At first they assumed it was a one-off, an anomaly, maybe dental damage from some unknown accident. But then they found another skull, and another, and another. By the time Swedish osteologist Caroline Arcini published her landmark study in 2005, she had documented 24 cases. Today we know of more than 130, and what they reveal about Viking culture is nothing like what history taught you. Here is what they actually did. A Viking warrior, or merchant, or traveler, sits down before someone with an iron file. No anesthetic, no numbing agent, just the file, the teeth, and the pain. The filer carves horizontal grooves across the upper front teeth. 2 grooves is the most common pattern. 3, 4 in a handful of cases. A few skulls show vertical marks. Some show crescent shapes. The depth varies. In some skulls, the grooves are shallow, surface scratches. In others, they cut deep into the dentin. This was not a quick or gentle process. This was a procedure someone had to endure, awake, for what must have felt like hours. And then came the pigment. Arcini and other researchers believe the grooves were packed with a mixture of fat or wax and charcoal. The result? When this man smiled, his teeth were striped. Black lines against white enamel. Maybe blue-black if the mixture was dense enough. Maybe red ochre in some cases. Think about that. A Viking grinning at you across a trading table or a battlefield, and his teeth are not teeth anymore. They are a weaponized display. Before the axe came the smile. For years, the obvious assumption was that these men were warriors, an elite fighting cult. The kind of men who would endure extreme pain to mark themselves as something beyond ordinary soldiers. That assumption was wrong. Arcini examined the skeletal remains in detail. Very few of these men were buried with weapons. Very few showed battle-related injuries. Their stature varied across the entire range of the population. Some tall, some short, some average. This was not a warrior elite. This was not a ruling class. And it was definitely not slaves. There is no evidence that thralls were the ones being modified. It was also not a coming-of-age ritual. The filed teeth appear in adult men of all ages. If this were a rite of passage done at 18 or 20, you would expect older men to show worn-down grooves and younger men to show fresh ones. Instead, the grooves appear proportionally across every adult age group. Young men, middle-aged men, old men. And here is what makes it stranger. Nearly 80% of all filed teeth skulls ever found come from a single place. Gotland, that small Swedish island in the Baltic Sea. Why there? In 2024, archaeologists Matthias Toplak and Lucas Kirk published a study that changed everything. They analyzed the burial sites on Gotland where the filed teeth skulls were concentrated. One cemetery in particular, Koppersvik, held 330 Viking-era burials. 46 of the men had filed teeth. And here is the clue that cracked the case open. Every single one of those burial sites was connected to trade. Gotland was not a warrior stronghold. It was the commercial heart of the Viking world. Merchants from across Scandinavia, the Baltic, and beyond passed through its ports. Goods moved through Gotland that connected Baghdad to Dublin, Constantinople to York. The filed teeth, Toplak and Kirk argue, were not a warrior mark. They were a merchant's mark. A permanent, irreversible sign of identification for a closed group of professional traders. A kind of precursor to the medieval guild system. If you saw a man with filed teeth, you knew he was part of the network. You knew he had been initiated. You knew you could trust him, or at least that there would be consequences if you crossed him. Think about what that means. before guild halls, before written contracts, before company seals and merchant flags. These men carved their credentials into their own bodies. Your teeth were your business card. And the concentration on Gotland now makes perfect sense. Gotland was the hub. Men came there to be initiated into the trading network. They got their teeth filed by a specialist, because the precision of the grooves proves these were not self-inflicted. They went home. They died wherever they died, but the mark stayed. The 3 examples found outside Sweden support this. 2 in Denmark, 1 in the Dorset mass grave in England, a group of Scandinavian men executed by Anglo-Saxons. Traders or raiders who had traveled far from Gotland, carrying the proof of their affiliation in their mouths. But here is what history books skip. The filed teeth are not the whole story. At the same Gotland sites, archaeologists found 3 female skulls that had been intentionally elongated, reshaped in infancy through skull binding, a practice known in other parts of the world, but almost unheard of in Viking Scandinavia. DNA analysis showed these women were not local. 1 came from the Baltic region. They had been modified elsewhere, then came to Gotland. And there is 1 more skull, from Egypt, 8th century, a man with horizontal grooves on his front teeth that looked nearly identical to the Viking examples. Arcini herself raised the question, coincidence or contact? Was there a connection between the Norse world and the Islamic world on body modification, just as there was in trade? We do not know. And that is the thing about the filed teeth. We have 130 skulls. We have good theories. But the Vikings left us no written explanation. No runestone says, these marks mean merchant. No saga describes a man getting his teeth filed. Everything we know is inference, read from bone, from burial position, from the geography of trade routes. What we do know is this: the Vikings modified their bodies in ways that were deliberate, painful, and permanent. They did it for identity. They did it for belonging. They did it to tell the world who they were before they ever spoke a word. And when they smiled, whether across a trading table or a battlefield, the person looking back at them saw something not entirely human, something marked, something that belonged to a group you did not want as your enemy. If you want more hidden history like this, the stories archaeology uncovered that the history books ignored, hit like and subscribe. It would really help this channel as we uncover the warrior cultures they erased from history.